Hello, my skylarks and crestals, and welcome to episode 28 of Michael Reads from a Book, the series in which I read from a series of books. Today's book of choice is Daughter of Regal and Other Tales by our fantasy extraordinaire Stephen R. Donaldson. He's probably better known for his Thomas Covenant series, but frankly, I'm more of a fan of his short-form stuff. Daughter of Regals is his first book of short stories. The other one's on the shelf here, Read the Just and Other Tales. I kind of like Read the Just better, but reads what's in front of us. So what I'm going to do this time, I think, is I'll read a page from each story, and we'll see how many we get through before the arbitrary time in which I decide to stop. Doesn't that sound exciting? It sounds exciting. This is Daughter of Regals, the title story. Through a small, narrow window high up in one wall of the manor's great ballroom, I watched the last of the lesser guests arrive. They were family of consequence. Scions of... is it scions? Scions? It's one of those words I only see in books. Of made or inherited fortune, maids like myself and otherwise, searching for excitement or marriageable partners. They were dressed and decked in all their splendor as befits people who attended any ball given at the manor of the Regals. But only the youngest and least cognizant among them came here simply to dance and dine under the chandeliers ablaze with candles. Most attended this night's festivities to witness the ascension of a new Regal to the throne of the Three Kingdoms. Or, if the ascension failed, to play whatever parts they chose for themselves in the collapse of the realm. I was surprised to find that I did not wish myself among them. They were safer than I, and I was not blind to the value of safety. But I was willing to forego such luxuries for the sake of my chance. And, a point which frequently dismayed my mage Regal, I was willing to risk the realm along with myself. He stood near me at another window, watching arrivals as I did. The mage Regal, my teacher, guardian, and guide, and for the past half-year, since the death of my father, regent of the Three Kingdoms. He was a short man, the hogshead chest emphasized by his fit of his mage's cassock, hands better suited to work at a smithy than to display at a table, and a bald pate on which sweat gleamed at any provocation, not a prepossessing figure, but his worth showed in the keenness of his eyes, the blunt courage of his features, and in the crook and rough-barred scepter which he gripped at his side. And we'll jump to Gilden-Fire. As sunset echoed the fire of farewell, which High Lord Elena had launched into the heavens from the watchtower of Revelstone, Corric Bloodguard and his mission to Surich wheeled their... Ranihin tightened their resolve about them and went running into the east. I love fantasy names, don't you? With the new sun in his eyes, Corric could not see clearly. Yet he moved comfortably to the rhythm of Braba's stride, faced the prospect ahead without a qualm. He had been riding Braba for nearly 50 years now, but his experience of Ranihin was far from that. The great horses of Ra by the score had borne him in turn, one after another as their individual lives ended and the fidelity passed from generation to generation. He knew that the Ranihin would not miss their footing. The terrain near Revelstone was much traveled and reliable. Yet even in the cluttered rigor of the Northrun climbs, or in the subtle deceptive of Sarangrave Flat, the Ranin would remain sure-footed. Their instincts were founded on something more constant than the superficial details of hills and plains. They bore Corric's mission down through the foothills of Revelstone as confidently as if the great horses were part of the ground itself. A part made mobile and distinct by their quicker life pulse, but still sharing the same bone, the same ancestry, so that no orphaning misstep or betrayal could occur between hoof and earth. Around Corric rode his companions, those who shared his mission to the giants of Surich. 14 more Bloodguard and 2 lords, Hiram son of Hul and Shetra Verumentmate. The memory of their passing from the people of Revelstone, Shetra's grief over her separation from her un-Rhinehim chosen and self-doubting husband, Hiram's argued attempts to probe the difference between what the Bloodguard remembered and what they knew, Thomas Covenant's refusal to share his mission, was vivid to Corric. And we'll do one more. What do we got here? Unworthy of the angel. And stumbled when my feet seemed to come down on the sidewalk out of nowhere. The heat was like walking into a wall. For a moment, I couldn't find my balance. Then I bumped into someone. That kept me from falling. But he was a tall man in an expensive suit, certain and pitiless, and as he recoiled, his expression said plainly that people like me shouldn't be allowed out in the streets. I retreated until I could brace my back against the hard glass of a display window and tried to take hold of myself. It was always like this. I was completely disoriented, a piece of cork carried down the river. Everything seemed to be melting from one place to another. Back and forth in front of me, people with bitten expressions hurried, chasing disaster. In the streets, too many cars snarled and blared at each other, blaming everything except themselves. The buildings seemed to go on for miles into a sky as heavy as a lid. They looked elaborate and hollow, like crypts. And the heat. I couldn't see the sun, but it was up there somewhere, in the first half of the morning, hidden by humidity and filth. Breathing was like inhaling hot oil. I had no idea where it was, but wherever it was, it needed rain. Maybe I didn't belong here. I prayed for that. The people who flickered glances at me didn't want what they saw. I was wearing a gray overcoat streaked with dust, spotted and stained. That didn't make sense. Except for a pair of ratty shoes, splitting at the seams, and my clammy pants, the coat was all I had on. My face felt like I'd spent the night in a pile of trash, but if I had, I couldn't remember. Alright. That gives you almost no indication of the value of any of these stories, but he's a pretty good writer. What Donaldson really capitalizes on, I think, is the morally ambiguous protagonist. He wrote Thomas Covenant like decades before Game of Thrones kind of popularized the whole dark and gritty fantasy thing, and I think he really sells characters that are relatable to, while at the same time you're kind of horrified by. It's harder to do that in a short story. They kind of specialize more in concepts, but I think he pulls it off a few times. Alright, for this time.